All right, so let's take a look at, we're going to kind of segue this week, still talk about the business plan a little bit, but we're also going to pick up leadership, and then the next 2 weeks we'll strictly be talking about leadership here. So I hope you guys have had a good week. Remember to get that stuff turned in on time. Make sure you read all the rubrics and the instructions, okay? All that good stuff. Do we have any questions before we get started, though? Let me ask you guys that. All righty. Well, if you guys, obviously, if you got any questions, feel free to interrupt me. Do whatever you need to do to get my attention. I'm always kind of keeping an eye down there in the chat box as well. So let's go ahead and get started today. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at kind of a little bit different way of taking a look at the business plan and leadership here. And we're going to take a look at an article from a guy named Guy Kawasaki. Now, Guy Kawasaki was kind of, he was considered and his official title for Apple back in the 80s and 90s was Apple's evangelist. He was the one that was primarily responsible for going around and kind of making Apple's brand popular as much as he could in the 80s and 90s. But he also spent a lot of time with Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs was considered a very good leader. He was a lot more green. He probably ate the green book for breakfast. He was so green. From the books that we have here in this class, and definitely not Maxwell. But there was a lot of good stuff that Steve Jobs came up with. So this name of this article that we're going to discuss here is What I Learned from Steve Jobs by Guy Kawasaki, that we'll work close with him. All right, so the first one here is customers cannot tell you what they need. Now, this may sound like this is crazy, but it is actually the case when you're trying to come up with a new product or new service, especially nobody has ever seen before, okay? So a lot of times what companies will do is they will use focus groups to try to get ideas of what customers like, what they don't like, and so forth. Now, I've been involved in a lot of custom focus groups. I've ran a couple of them and things like that. And if you don't ask the right questions, people don't know exactly what they need to say to you. Now, this goes along with your business plan here, because the mistake that you do not want to make is to offer a service or a product or even a good, like we talked about last week, that nobody wants. You're in the wrong place, you have the wrong price, you have the wrong thing, all this type of stuff can go into it. And I know this sounds crazy where it says customers cannot tell you what they need, but it is something that I definitely want to show you, because if you ask customers, if you go into a focus group or you just ask customers on the street and you say, okay, so what do you need? There's basically three things that's going to come out of their mouth: better, faster, or cheaper, okay? In other words, I want it the same, but I want it better, faster, or cheaper. And this can be a difficult thing to do, okay, when you're constantly trying to improve your products because you have competition that goes along with you and so on. So let me show you what I mean by this. Okay, if we go back to the 1880s, this is a typical picture here of a horse and carriage, horses, I guess I should say, and a carriage. If you took that guy off that carriage right there and you said, okay, what do you need to get your job done better? What do you think this guy would say? Does anybody want to take a shot at that? What do you think this guy would say if you asked him, what do you need in order to make the job that you're doing with that carriage and horses, in order to make it easier? More horses. That's a great answer right there, Tony. Anybody else? I would be safe to say that he would probably say a faster horse, okay? But as we all know, about the 1890s and on, now we have automobiles. Horses are still being used today, but not like they were 100 years ago. So people didn't even consider horses. Didn't even consider cars, because they were so enamored with horses, and that's what they had to get them from point A to point B, okay? So what Steve Jobs means by this is customers don't even consider something because it doesn't even exist yet, okay? So how do we get to that next big thing? Well, there's also an aspect that Steve Jobs liked to talk about, and he liked to say, jump to the next curve, okay? So what he used to like to say is big wins happen when you go beyond better sameness. Let me say that again. Big wins happen when you go beyond better sameness. In other words, better, cheaper, faster means it's the same thing, only it's better or it's cheaper or it's faster. The next curve, on the other hand, if we take a look at this picture right here, this is a dot matrix printer, okay? This was used back when I was in high school, all right? And then what Steve Jobs started to take a look at, and the problem with this dot matrix printer is this: it had one font. Okay, it hit the paper, which was not a problem back then, but it only had one font. So everything looked the same. All right. So what somebody then said was, why not take it to where we can take out the, for lack of a better word, cartridge, and put a different cartridge in that's got a different font on it. Okay, that's fine, but it's kind of the sameness. You see what I'm saying? So big wins are not going to happen when you go beyond the better sameness, because if everybody else is using a dot matrix printer and you say, okay, well, I'm going to bring it to where I can put a different head on for a different font, that's still kind of the same thing. So there's an aspect here that I heard a long time ago that talks about ice, and this is going to lead to something else here, so give me just a second. If you think of ice harvesters, the very first thing that you had was you had people going out and they would actually cut ice off of a pond or a lake, all right? And then they bring that to people's homes. Then they actually came up with, and they made it to the next curve. In other words, the next big jump for ice was ice factories. So they figured out a way to make ice in a factory. That way you didn't need a frozen pond or a lake, and you could then deliver to the house. Now, of course, as we all know now, we have refrigerators, because that was the purpose of the ice, was the refrigerators were going to then provide what ice provided in the past, needed electricity, and therefore you could keep things cool and you keep things from spoiling, okay? Now, I will tell you about one company that I think is doing a very good job with this. They're taking products that most of us have overlooked and made it new. This company is called Nest. All right, I don't know if you guys have heard of this or not, but it's actually a thermostat that is connected to the Wi-Fi network at your house. I ended up buying one of these about 3 months ago. It's absolutely wonderful, because when you're not at home, you can just turn down the air. When you get back, when you're about 20 minutes before you get back, you can turn the air back up. And what that does is it saves on your electric bill. It's all controlled through Wi-Fi. I can take a look at it at any time on my iPhone, and it's a great product. I just read today where Nest is now going after smoke detectors. So instead of having just a smoke detector that you don't understand and trying to knock it off the wall when the battery runs out, what Nest is doing is they're going to make Wi-Fi smoke detectors that detect smoke, carbon monoxide, all these different types of things, and you can control it from your phone. So when it starts to read just a little bit of carbon monoxide, it can alert you whether you're at home, where you're, wherever you're at, and it also has got it's also got a sensor built into it that when you wave your hand, if it does detect something, you can wave your hand, and what that will do is that will make the alarm go off instead of having to go climb up a ladder and turn the thing off or remove the battery when when your food starts to catch on fire, or whatever the case may be. So a very innovative thing. It's taking the thermostats, and it's taking these smoke detectors to the next curve, just like I talked about with the stop matrix, like I talked about with the ice. And one thing that Steve Jobs did to take these printers, as you see the screen right here, to the next curve, was obviously they came up with laser printers. And what that did is that ushered in a whole new era of desktop publishing and so on that we know today, okay? All right. Steve Jobs also liked to say design counts. Okay, now I'm just going to tell you right now, Steve Jobs drove people absolutely nuts with his design demands. He wanted to take a look at, you see the wheel that went around this iPod right here from the older iPods? That color is black. He looked at 110 shades of black before they finally chose which one to use. Now, you may say that is absolutely crazy, but you know what? The iPod is what really started to bring Apple around, okay? So with this, and where Steve Jobs got this at was basically from his father, and I ended up reading Steve Jobs' book, which is a great and crazy read, but all at the same time. But Steve Jobs got this way because his father was so meticulous. His father built a lot of different things, and one thing he loved to build was furniture. But he used to tell Steve that the back of the furniture needs to look just as good as the front of the furniture. Okay, so he would put just as good a wood on the back of it as it would be on the front. Most companies don't care about the back; it goes up against the wall, and therefore it's not a big deal. But that's the way Steve Jobs always looked at design, and that's the reason we have some of the breakthroughs that we have today from Apple and other companies, okay? Also, he used to say that design counts as well. Take a look at this. Look at this idiotic product right here. This is obviously, you know, a shoe that that has got a bottle opener at the bottom of it. Now, it may be an idea, good idea in concept, but think of all the crap that we step on. I mean, this is obviously made for the beach and things like that, but do you really want to open up a bottle of beer or a soda with a bottle cap over it that's the bottom of your shoe just after you've walked through a dog park? I don't think so. So, you know, people try crazy things. I'm sure a lot of work went into this, but you've got to think about the practicality of this before you really start to bring a product around, okay? All right, look at this right here. This is December 10th, 1985. This was actually a phone that Apple came up with that you can very easily see came from Apple, and this was their first idea of coming up with the phone. Okay, now back in 1985, we did not have cell phones, so this probably would have been more of a house phone, but changing your mind is a sign of intelligence. Okay, when the iPhone came out in 2007, the only apps that was on the phone was the apps that shipped with the phone. You could not go to the App Store and download new apps. Steve Jobs was very adamant that he did not want to open up the iPhone to other apps. And so when they shipped it, the only apps that were there were the ones that were on the phone. However, in 6 months' time, he changed his mind. And because he changed his mind, I don't know how many billions of dollars Apple's made off of apps that's come through the App Store, but I think all of us here could spend quite a few years spending all that money that they've had. So he did change his mind. He wasn't necessarily always set in his ways, and it can be a very good thing. Now, continuing this, some of you may remember this. This was called My Pet Monster. This is in the 80s and 90s. This was actually a very popular toy. This was marketed towards boys. And so you know, when we look at it today, it's like, wow, did they really sell something like that? I don't remember this toy, but this was very popular. It's got its own Wikipedia page and everything else. It brings back some very bad connotations of slavery, if you ask me. But anyways, what you could do is you could break the chains, you could take the handcuff, you could attach it to yourself so you could never lose your little monster, My Pet Monster, as it was called. It was a very popular idea. Now, the next slide may shock some of you, but look what a guy did. He was a designer, and look what he did with this concept. Adidas had a designer that loved My Pet Monster so much that he decided to try to incorporate this into a shoe. Okay, what an idiotic move. But look, they've actually spent money on this. This is not a Photoshop picture right here. This was an actual product that they considered coming out with for people to wear, you know, out and about and so on. Obviously, they did not come up with this. Somebody saw that this could be, you know, very controversial, and they decided to change it. But you've got to be not so set in your ways that you can't change your mind when something needs to be changed. In other words, don't be so close to the business, the product, or service that you don't change your mind based upon whoever's feedback, especially your customers. All right. So let's talk about why value is different from price. Now, we spent a little bit of time last week talking about price and what price means to people, okay? Value, on the other hand, brings a whole different set of ways of looking at things, okay? So if you decide that everything is based upon price, you're not going to do well. I had a student last month that talked about wedding videography that I think I talked about to you guys this last week. And he was actually charging almost nothing for weddings just to get the experience, and realizing he could have charged $1,500 to $2,000 doing the same thing, and people would have liked it, okay? So you just cannot compete solely on price, because price is not all that matters, okay? So what is important, at least to some people, and I would say a lot of people, is value, okay? Value takes into all kinds of things, okay? When you think that you're getting something for your value, it brings a whole different set of the way we look at products and services. Like, as an example, I have owned, and I don't own right now, but I've owned probably 8 Hondas. The reason why I like Hondas, I could have gone with a more expensive car, but I thought a Honda at the time, obviously eight cars worth, was the best value out there for the money, okay? And so a lot of times, if you take a look at value versus price, this is what you're going to get, okay? So here's an example of this. You guys have probably all seen this on TV, to where you've got this, what they call wipe new, okay? Wipe the years away is what they say. You can run it through 50 car washes and it looks the same, and so on and so on. So why should you buy wax? Why should you spend all your money doing this and all that when you can have one application of wipe new and not worry about it ever again? This is the things that sell on TV. When people see things like this, okay, they think that there's value involved, and this can be a very, very big seller, okay? Let's look at value from the aspect of Walmart versus Target, okay? Walmart likes to be the price leader. They will never say they're cheap, okay, but they like to be the price leader on different things, okay? Save money, live better, okay? Save money is not saying that is, that is going to be the cheapest, is what I'm trying to say. But there is a difference between Target and Walmart. If I have a choice, I rather shop at Target than I would Walmart. Walmart, I don't know about you guys, and I'm sure you guys the same way, drives me absolutely bonkers. You have to wait in line forever. The aisles are so close together, okay? It just drives me crazy. I like Target better because it doesn't seem to be as busy. I seem to get in and get out a lot quicker. The aisles are wider. I'm not always running into people and trying to go around their carts. So the value for me for Target, I'd rather, even if I might pay just a little bit more, I would rather shop at Target than I would Walmart. Obviously, I shop at both, but if I had a choice, Target is the value for me versus price for Walmart. So I hope that kind of explains this to you, okay? So here's a picture of Steve Jobs when they first came out with the iPhone. And what he tried to tout here is it's an iPod, it's a phone, it's an internet all in one, okay? What Steve Jobs really liked to do, though, is he liked to demo his own products, okay? And sometimes it didn't always work. As a matter of fact, I read an article just a few days ago, actually, about when they first introduced the first iPhone, that thing barely worked, okay? They were all crossing their fingers, hoping that, first of all, it could not make a phone call, okay? The internet had been crashing on it. Just tons of things went wrong. But Steve always had a plan B. But no matter what, real CEOs demo. Here's another example, okay? You guys all probably know this guy, Papa John. He is the face of this franchise. He is the guy that started it, okay? He is the one that started to come up with the very first Papa John's restaurant, and then they've taken off since then. But he demos his product. He stands behind his product. I don't think there's anybody here in this go-to session that would say that Papa John here does not care about his product. He always wants to make it the best. But he demos it. He's the one that comes out with everything, just like Steve Jobs did, okay? So if you're over a company, especially if you're the CEO, you've got to know how your products work. I've seen examples of CEOs being up on stage, and I'm not kidding about this, being up on stage and make a mistake and not know what to do next because they don't know the product inside and out. That's what you don't want to do. All right, so any questions on that subject right there? Like I said, that's kind of a combination of taking a look at products and services and a little bit of leadership thrown in. Are there any questions before we move on and talk about week two assignments for the week? Anybody got anything? All righty, so let's take a look at the assignments here. All right, so weekly overview here. Okay, we're going to talk about each one of these individually. I'm not really going to talk about discussion boards, only to say this. Any questions that I ask on the discussion board, and this is going to be the same throughout the program, make sure that each question is answered with at least 5 sentences. And when you respond to a student, to one of your fellow peers, just don't say, that's a great idea, love it, and let that be your post, okay, for the responding to a student. That's not going to work, guys. We want to get the discussion boards up and running, and we want to make sure that you guys, put some time and put some effort into it and answer those questions, okay? We're also going to talk about our initial blog post. Look for the feedback from me this week. I'm going to be sending an email out to everybody. I will be grading your blogs and taking a look at them, making comments about them. And everybody, even if you get 100, everybody needs to look at the comments, okay? Because it's going to help you in what you're trying to do and what we're trying to have you do with your blog in the program. So the initial blog post, the very first blog post that you'll be putting on your blog will be due Sunday, and we'll talk more about that in a second. And then our test is due on Sunday as well, okay? So let's talk a little bit about, and hopefully all of you have seen the email that I sent out yesterday about Turnitin. Turnitin.com helps us with it provides a great place for us to be able to grade your papers, any kind of text documents that you turn in, and also make sure that nobody uses material that they've used before or use material from some other author, okay? I'm sure all of you know what we're talking about on that. So make sure if you haven't seen that email, make sure you take a look at that email. And if I could ask, guys, you are on the online program, I would really like for you guys to read your emails at least once a week, okay? And make sure that you read them in detail, okay? Because like last week, and I've gotten an email from a couple of you about the link for this session, and I know all of you obviously found the link to this session, but in there I said that the link will remain the same all 4 weeks. So make sure you take a look at that. So try to look at your email every day. I'm not going to send you out something that is just fluff. It's always going to be important stuff, okay? Because we all get a lot of emails, okay, every day. So I want to make sure that you guys understand that I'm only going to send out important stuff, okay? So our blog post, our initial blog post here. What this needs to be, and always take a look at the instructions in the rubric. I can't say that enough. You're going to do 300 words and 2 links, okay? So let me just, there we go. Let me just pull this up here. Okay, so review the rubric. You want to make sure that the length is at least 300 words, and the references that I say right there, those need to be links, okay? You want to utilize hyperlinks, not APA citations. What I do not want to see on your blog post, and if you do this, I will have to take points off, is a very long web address or references down at the bottom. If you take a look at anything online, if you go to CNN or you go to USA Today or Professional Blog, what they're going to do is they're going to show you a post, and then they're going to have links within that post, and that makes it look very, very professional. Okay, so make sure that you have at least 2 links, and that you use hyperlinks to do that. And how do you do that? That is on the week 1 download, the keynote that I sent you guys on how to set up your blog. That is toward the end on how to do these hyperlinks. Okay. So with this initial blog post, you also want to submit this to Turnitin, and you want to post it to your blog. So what I want to do here is I want to take a second. I want to take you to my blog, and I want to show you what I'm looking for as far as a blog post is concerned, okay? All right, so this is my blog right here, okay? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to focus in on this right here. Now, if you've read Law Number 2 from your green book, you're going to recognize this. So you can see what I've got here. The Orlando Sentinel newspaper today had an opinion piece. I provided a hyperlink back to that opinion piece, okay, so that if you wanted to read the original thing that I read, you could read it. And so about using children working for their parents. As Robert Greene in his book, 48 Laws of Power, Law Number 2, blah, 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 okay? And then I start talking about, instead of the word friends, replace that with family, because that can be just as bad. Then I go into my opinion. This can be a great idea or absolutely terrible, okay? With terrible usually winning in many cases. Then I give you an example of places that this has happened in. This plays out many, many times on the show Kitchen Nightmares. Again, a link going back to that show, which stars Gordon Ramsay. A link going to Gordon Ramsay if you didn't know who he was. Almost every week on the show throughout the years of the family members that cause terrible food, service, or no management. Family hates and refuses to fire these family members, and therefore profits start to decline. It's kind of hard to fire your uncle because Thanksgiving is probably not going to go too well, if you know what I mean by that. Okay, so this is how we want you guys to take a look at your blog post. Find something out there that is, that's out in the news. A few months ago, about 5 or 6 months ago, if you guys remembered, the Tupac Shakur hologram that came out at the music festival in California. A lot of people wrote about that, and that is something that that was very popular at the time. It's not as much popular today. It hasn't been done, but maybe one other time since I know that, and it wasn't with Tupac. But these are the types of things that show that you are keeping up with the times, that you're looking at the trends and so on. Some of the blog posts that were written about as far as the Tupac incident was concerned, these 360 deals and other deals that entertainment artists are using, that sign contracts. Now what they are doing is they're putting a clause in their contracts that after they die, that any type of revenue that is made off a hologram will therefore go to their estate. I'm sure how many entertainers out there right now have got these types of clauses in there. But these are the types of things that people out there in the industry want to see you looking for and looking at, are these trends like this. Okay, so there's a lot of things going out there. Whatever your blog is about, always make sure that you write something that goes along with your blog. If it doesn't, it's not going to make sense to the reader, and so on. Okay, so any questions about the blog before we move on here? All right. So, Ariel, are we allowed to do an introductory post before? Absolutely. Listen, just because I require one blog post for this class, and every class after this is going to require two, the more the merrier as far as I'm concerned. All right. So if you want to do an introductory post, you're not going to hear me complain about that whatsoever, and nobody in the program. You guys can write as many posts as you want to your blog. All you're going to need to do is tell us which blog post you want us to grade. Okay. So this is the type of thing that we want you guys to do for your blog and make it look as professional as possible. Okay. So very, very good question, Ariel. Very good question. All right. Case assessment. Case assessment is your test. Okay. This covers only the readings from the first 2 weeks. Now, what I mean by that is if I ask for a green law, it's only the green laws that we've covered in class. I'm just going to tell you right now, if you answer one of the test questions with a law that we haven't even covered, it's just automatically going to be points off. So it's only the readings from the first 2 weeks, only the green laws, and only the Maxwell chapters. Okay? I give you 5 scenarios. You answer 4. Okay? And only one Maxwell trait or green law per answer. Okay? If you give me more than 2, I will take the very first one that you mentioned. You can see why this has happened, right, folks? Okay? I have had people that have tried to use other laws, other chapters, and then tried to argue with me about it. I've had people that have mentioned like 3 green laws that it could have been and then were mad because they wrote about the 3 green laws. So just choose one, Maxwell, and I'm going to tell you which chapter it is, or which, I'm going to tell you it's either going to be Maxwell or green. So I'm even hinting on what it does. So when you take a look at that test and you pull up that Microsoft Word document, this is what I'm looking for. You need to tell me the law or the chapter, why it applies, and you need to give me a story from the books. Okay? Give me a story from the books. If you do that, listen, even if you give me the wrong answer, but you do a pretty good job of explaining it, you convince me a little bit, I'm going to give you partial credit. You can't go wrong with that. But I'm just going to tell you right now, what kills students and what I don't want to see from you guys is waiting till Sunday night at about 11 o'clock to do this test. That's what absolutely destroys grades a lot of times in this case assessments. Man, I tell you, and I'm not joking when I said this. As a matter of fact, Full Sail called me to the carpet on this one time. I had a class made up of about 7 students. It was a campus class. Every student in that class got an A. And I couldn't believe it. I was called in the office and they said, how come every student got an A in this class? And I said, because they all deserved it. Next question. You got to be kidding me. Now, I'm just going to tell you, that doesn't happen very often. Okay? I've taught for 18 years. That is the only time that it's ever happened. But I have 27 students in this online program, and I've got 11 in class, 10 in class. If I give out 37 A's, I would love it, because I mean you guys did a great job. So don't wait till the last minute, guys. It's just an absolute killer for students, okay? Okay, we already talked about the blog post. So as always, if you've already listened to this, there's an archive, and there will always be an archive to the sessions. If you email from the FSO platform, guys, always make sure that you put your name in there. If you don't give me your name, I don't know who you are, especially if I'm out somewhere and I get an email and I want to respond to you via phone, but I don't even know who you are. I can't tell a lot of times from the email addresses. So always put your name on the emails if you would. That's the phone number if you want to reach my desk. But I got to tell you, really, the best way to reach me is email. I'm constantly checking my emails, just like you guys are. And so I can respond back to you in a very precise manner. Don't mind talking to you on the phone at all. But if you need something pretty quickly, email is always the way to go. And the FSO support is always there. It's available to 2 a.m. every night. Okay, so if you guys have any problems with anything technical or so on, give them a call. So that is all I have for you guys today. Are there any questions before we call it a day? All righty. Well, as always, if you guys have no other questions, if you want to go ahead and log off, I will know that everybody's done. And hopefully I will catch all of you, including more people, next week on this go-to session. And look forward to, and look for those grades and those blogs to be graded and everything. And I'll be sending that email out. So anyways, guys, have a great day, and we'll talk to you later.